So since the last time we met, a lot has happened at TRIDEC. The last time we met was in March at our annual meeting. And before I start, I just want to say a couple things. I had the opportunity 2 weeks ago to tour the new AutoZone Distribution Center in Pasco. Really impressive facility. They've been in operation a little over a month, and at the end of July, they had 167 employees, and I suspect they're close to 200 right now. You know, it's great to have new jobs for Tri-Cityans, but what I think a lot of people don't know is they moved almost 40 families to the community too. So that's a big economic impact. And it wasn't just management they moved in, but they moved people in all different occupations. And it's really to create that AutoZone culture we heard so much about at the annual meeting. They do a cheer at every meeting, and I wish I could do AutoZone, but I can't do that. I won't try. You know, every time I'm on the bypass highway in Richland, the Lamb Weston facility keeps getting bigger and bigger as you look off to the west. And that expansion is due to be complete this fall. It's on schedule, and that'll create another 125 jobs again later this fall. And who's been to downtown Kennewick recently and seen the port's nearly completed buildings that are going to be the anchor to the Columbia Garden Wine Village? And West Richland just dedicated a wine affluent center to help serve development in the Red Mountain Center area, primarily in the wine industry. Isn't that great? Isn't this a great place? Really, isn't it a great place? Lots and lots going on. I'm going to try to just run through very quickly some of the things we've been involved in this summer or since last March. In April, we sponsored an event at the Industrial Asset Managers Council meeting. And IAMC is an association of corporate real estate and site selection consultants, about 250 in attendance. Just another reason, just another way we try to keep ourselves in front of those decision makers in corporate America. We supported the Tri-City Airport at the Allegiant Air Conference, Airports Conference, where we discussed existing service as well as new service. In May, we were doing retail recruitment with the cities at the International Council of Shopping Centers Recon Trade Show. In cooperation with PNNL, we helped host a group of executives from TEPCO, the Tokyo Electric company that operates the Fukushima plant, and they came to discuss the relationships the Tri-Cities has with DOE, local business, community stakeholders, and regulators. This is actually the second large group from Japan that has come to talk about Fukushima. The first group was largely government officials. In June, TRIDEC held its third annual Food and Beverage Expo, the Fabrio Expo, that featured 70 local companies and was attended by over 30 buyers and brokers, food brokers. This effort is intended to showcase our local food and beverage industry and to help small, medium-sized businesses find additional markets for their products. Also in June, Neoen, the French renewable energy developer that we've been working with for better than 3 years now, announced plans for a 20-megawatt solar project on 100 acres of land TRIDEC transferred to the Energy Northwest after receiving it from the Department of Energy. Earlier this month, we hosted a group of commissioners and staff from the Port of Seattle that toured the Tri-Cities and culminated a visit at the B Reactor to talk about tourism potential that the new national park presents for both Seattle and the Tri-Cities. Last week, we hosted our 20th annual congressional staff tour. 13 congressional staff from 6 different offices and attended the 2-day event. The group spent the first full day at the Hanford site learning about cleanup and the challenges facing cleanup, and most of the second day at PNNL learning about the great science that's going on there. This year, we partnered with the Pacific Northwest Waterways Association, so most of the group traveled out to Tidewater's Snake River Terminal in Pasco to learn more about the importance of the Snake River dams from a transportation perspective. Obviously, this is a busy week. The senator's here. We have other members of Congress here. Secretary Perry will be here. And so a lot of things going on this week. We were in Washington, D.C. in April and June, and we'll be there again next month to advocate on behalf of PNNL and Hanford Cleanup. Also in September, TRIDEC will be a major sponsor along with the State Department of Commerce and the Port of Seattle in a meeting of site location consultants called the Site Selectors Guild, and that is in Seattle. You've heard me say many times that economic development is a team sport. And we're grateful for our partnerships with the counties, the cities, the ports, and others in the community, like the lab, like CBC, like WSU Tri-Cities, because none of us could be successful without the others. Economic development is not an event, but rather a process, and it takes time and patience to realize success. With that, it's my pleasure to ask Steve Ashby from PNNL, the lab director there, and our premier sponsor for this event, to say a few words about Battelle and introduce Senator Cantwell. Steve.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Carl, for the introduction. And on behalf of Battelle, it is our pleasure to sponsor today's luncheon, where we have the honor of hearing from Senator Cantwell. I'd like to begin by thanking TRIDEC for organizing today's event, the luncheon we're enjoying today, and for the many ways in which TRIDEC works tirelessly on behalf of our entire community. Carl mentioned last week's tour of the various staff brought together from across our state delegation to visit the Tri-Cities, the 20th such visit that TRIDEC has organized. It was a terrific opportunity to showcase our community's assets and for them to hear firsthand about the issues that matter to us in the Tri-Cities. And so would you please join me in thanking TRIDEC for its leadership and service to our community. Now, before introducing our special guest, Carl asked that I provide a brief update on the laboratory. So let me start with a topic that is top of mind for many of us, not only at the laboratory but around the community, and that, of course, is the FY18 federal budget. Although the budget process has a ways to go, and I remind people there is a process and it's long and involved and complicated, we're pleased to see that both the House and the Senate markup signaled strong support for the work that goes on in this community, in particular the DOE national laboratories, including PNNL. In particular, both committees provide robust funding for the Office of Science, which portends well for our basic scientific research programs that we conduct at the lab. And this includes our envisioned Energy Sciences Capability Project, which would feature a new 100,000 square foot chemistry building that is critical to our ability to support future DOE missions. This proposed facility will be key in reimagining how catalysts are designed and synthesized for myriad energy applications, ranging from the production of sustainable biofuels to the storage of energy and safer, more efficient batteries, technologies that the Senator has personally championed throughout her career. Both appropriations committees also provide more funding than the President's budget request for our applied energy programs. But I must say that we definitely prefer the Senate's numbers over those of the other chamber. Despite the uncertainty of the budget, I do want to call attention to the 4,400 scientists, engineers, and support professionals at PNNL who continue to do truly amazing things in service of our nation and the world, and it's a great source of pride for me to have the opportunity to represent them. For example, they are improving cancer treatments through precision medicine and advancing our understanding of the universe around us by shedding light on so-called dark matter. PNNL staff are also on the front lines of cybersecurity, especially for the electric grid. This is a topic the Senator cares deeply about. In fact, Senator Cantwell, you may recall that we spoke about the threat to our grid while attending the airport grand opening earlier this year. And you were right in to have those concerns. And in fact, not long after our conversation, the world experienced the WannaCry ransomware attack, which PNNL cyber experts were the first to detect on the grid through the work we do with utilities. Closer to home, we are proud of the role we play at Hanford, where we use our science and technology in partnership with the contractors there to support cleanup efforts, saving millions of dollars on treating contaminated soil and groundwater to providing technical support for the waste treatment plant. And increasingly, we're bringing the world's best and brightest to the Tri-Cities, the place we call home, as we did just 10 days ago when we celebrated EMSL's 20th anniversary, and we also, in a separate event, hosted more than 200 international experts meeting on microbial communities. Tomorrow, we'll have an opportunity to highlight the important work of the laboratory to the Secretary of Energy, Rick Perry, when he visits in the morning. And we're thrilled that Senator Cantwell will join the Secretary along with Congressman Dan Newhouse and Congressman Greg Walden. And thank you, Senator, for taking the time to participate in tomorrow's tour. It's very important, and we appreciate your time doing so. And so now I have the pleasure of introducing Senator Maria Cantwell, who is the ranking member of the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. In this role, she has been a tremendous advocate for the laboratory, Hanford, and the Tri-Cities. Senator Cantwell's presence is felt throughout the state of Washington, including here in Eastern Washington. As many in the agricultural industry will know, she provided strong support for the state's food and beverage industry in the last Farm Bill through specialty crop grants, market access grants, and specialty crop research funding. She is known around the Hill as Senator Freight for her steadfast support of transportation infrastructure to increase freight capacity, safety, and jobs. She authored the nationally significant Freight and Highways Project Grant Program in the Fixing America Transportation Act, the first ever multimodal freight grant program focused on freight mobility. Here in the Tri-Cities, she has secured several grants and appropriations, for example, to ensure that Cadillac Regional Medical Center has improved pediatric facilities and telemedicine capabilities, and that the Tri-Cities Community Health can provide expanded medical services to its customers. She secured grants to support our firefighters and fire districts, to replace our transit buses, and to expand capacity at the West Richland wastewater treatment plant, to name just a few of her many accomplishments. Senator Cantwell has also contributed to the growth of regional economy through her staunch support for STEM education, the renewal of the renewable energy production tax credits, and the establishment of the FAA Research Partnership at the Center of Excellence in Alternative Jet Fuels and Environment at WSU Tri-Cities. As an aside, these topics are all important to people at the laboratory and Battelle, and we very much appreciate your efforts in these areas. Senator Cantwell is also known as a fierce advocate for Hanford cleanup, and ensuring that the nation make good on what she firmly believes is a moral and legal obligation to the Tri-Cities community when it comes to the Hanford cleanup. In particular, to ensure that that cleanup is guided by the best available science and engineering and places worker safety as the top priority. She's been a champion for preserving the history of our community, including the decade-long fight to create the Manhattan National Historical Park. She has advocated for this park as an important reminder to future generations of the devastating impact of nuclear weapons, and that scientific innovation and social responsibility must always go hand in hand. The Senator is a firm believer that innovation and affordable electricity helps drive our regional economy, and as such, she is focused on grid modernization and the importance of the federal Columbia River power system from her earliest days in office. The Senator wrote legislation authorizing the Pacific Northwest Grid Demo Project, a first-of-its-kind test of transactive energy concepts that enables consumers to engage with and control their services from the power grid. We at PNNL are proud to be on the leading edge of implementing your vision, Senator, and appreciate your continuing leadership in this area. And today, as ranking member for the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, she is reaffirming her commitment to ensure a resilient energy future, in part by working with Senator Murkowski of Alaska to craft bipartisan energy and natural resources legislation that would also result in major investments in central Washington. This legislation would enhance water security in the Yakima Basin, one of the state's richest agricultural regions, and provide funding to train our workforce for the energy jobs of the future. It also would drive innovation by increasing investments in the Department of Energy's Office of Science, along with next generation nuclear energy technology, grid modernization, energy storage, and cybersecurity, all areas I'm proud to say that PNNL is playing a significant role. And so Senator Cantwell has been a tremendous advocate for our community in countless ways. It is an honor to have you with us today, so please join me in welcoming Senator Maria Cantwell.
Well, good afternoon. Steve, thank you for that wonderful introduction. The shorthand version of that is, I'm a geek and I like science and I like P&L. It's great to be here. I'm so proud to be here as part of TRIDEC's Luncheon program. And I want to thank Carl and TRIDEC and everything you do, including your most recent recruit. That shows you I really do believe in TRIDEC's economic development mission. And I hope that David Riepelog does everything you want him to do, Carl, in this new effort. So Fran, thank you, too, for your leadership on the board and everything that you do. When we were talking at the table here, I wanted to make sure that I gave a shout out to Chris Lapp and the I3 people, because they won a DOE 2016 award for Protege of the Year, and that is in their important work as a small business creating increased economic development and opportunity here in the Tri-City. So give them a round of applause for that. And it's just great to be with so many people in the Sam Volpen test room of this facility, and everybody who knew Sam knows exactly what that means. That means that we got to keep going and keep working and keep focusing. And Steve, thank you so much for your leadership and for everything that you do as part of the labs. I'm reminded when I got elected in 2000, people might remember it was a very close election. I only won by 2,229 votes. And it took 3 weeks to decide that I was the winner. And when I went to Washington, D.C. to show up a little bit late than everybody else, I went to go see about committee assignments. And when I got into the room, into the outer lobby of the majority leader's office, someone said, "The phone's for you." And I was like, no one even knows I'm here. How can there be a phone for me? And it was Congressman Norm Dix. And he said, "Maria, you got to get on the Energy Committee." I said, "Norm, you didn't even know I was here. How did you know I was here?" And he said, "This is the first test. If you don't get on the Energy Committee, Scoop Jackson's going to roll over in his grave." And the rest is history. And so I am so proud of the work that Steve just outlined, because I just believe in advocating. I know a lot in Washington, D.C., they talk about regulating, and I keep saying I'm from Washington State and I want to keep innovating. And that is exactly what is being done here in the Tri-Cities. So I'm proud to have worked with the community on so many economic development projects, most recently the Pasco Airport, and let me tell you, we're not stopping until we get that direct flight to LA and to other places in this community. The land transfer was mentioned, and it took us a long time to work on DOE and the land transfer, but look at the results it's starting to yield, so we're so happy about that. The biofuels for jet fuel, I guarantee you we will see the manufacturing of this product in the very near future to help us diversify off of the jet fuel that we use today. So we're so proud that the Tri-Cities is providing the scientific leadership on that project. And so happy that the Manhattan Project is now, I think, at 13,000 visitors a year. So we want to continue to increase that. And I have another mission besides the one of getting the DOE secretary to come to town. I need to get the Department of Interior secretary to appoint us somebody to help us with the Manhattan Project. And that is big on the list. So. And I just want to remind everybody, I know we had this little skirmish as it related to the Hanford Reach, but I hope that TRIDEC and the community will think very importantly about the outdoor industry. We all like hunting and fishing and hiking and recreating. The outdoor economy nationwide is now third behind finance and healthcare. It literally is a $887 billion consumer spending business. And for us in the state, it's $22 billion. It creates 227,000 jobs in our state. So we need to continue to think of ways in which we can preserve that great outdoor lifestyle that is so important to us. But as Steve mentioned, priority number one is that cleanup budget. That is the main mission. And Senator Murray and I work on that very diligently. Obviously, she's done great work as an appropriator, and as Steve mentioned, let's just say we do like that Senate budget a little bit better than what the President proposed, and certainly we are going to continue to improve on that. That is that we have basically in the Richland office, a 6% increase, the river protection 6%, and the Office of Science an increase as well. I don't believe that this is the time to be cutting in any of these budgets. We need to invest in science and the future of the Tri-Cities. Now, I know that cleanup is getting more complicated, and as cleanup gets more complicated, we need to make sure at the plutonium finishing plant that we have, 1, strong partnerships, 2, more transparency between contractors and workers, making sure that we invest in safety and training measures, and that they become even more critical. Worker safety will continue, as it has been, to be job 1. And tomorrow, we will get to, along with Karen McInnes, get to take Secretary Perry to the Hammer facility so we can see what workers do every single day. But Steve mentioned something that I want to focus most of my remarks on this afternoon, and that is the incredible challenge, both the threat and opportunity of cybersecurity. Just this past month, the Washington Post reported that, quote, Russian government hackers were behind cyber intrusions into a U.S. nuclear power plant business systems. Now, that ought to ring alarm bells for all of us. In December of 2015, the Russians basically infiltrated 3 Ukrainian facilities, and they did it to a utility in the northern Kiev earlier this year. So the U.S. Department of Energy needs to play an important role here. The incident in Ukraine was described as, quote, a step change in the sophistication and the intent of the attackers, end quote. And there is another story from the Christian Science Monitor, quote, the cyber spies linked to China's military targeted nearly 24 U.S. natural gas pipelines, stealing information that could be used to sabotage U.S. pipelines, end quote. So, no doubt, one of our biggest challenges as a nation is going to be living in this interconnected world, the threat of cybersecurity and the infrastructure that is needed to protect it. So that is why I'm calling on the Secretary of Energy not to cut the cybersecurity budget as proposed in the President's budget, but to do what Senator Murkowski and I did in our Senate bill that passed 85-12, double the investment in cybersecurity for our nation. So tomorrow, I will be able to give him some of those specifics. The good news for our nation, for our state, and for our region is the Tri-Cities is already playing a key role in cybersecurity. PNNL, as mentioned, is on the cutting edge of cybersecurity research and development. They are working with the Department of Homeland Security to develop software that allows cyber analytics to detect the attacks on the grid 10 to 100 times faster than any current method. If you think about it, the lab and its firewall blocks 24 million suspected internet communications, 25,000 of which are confirmed cyber attacks. That's what they do each day. So I have no doubt that they know how our country needs to move forward on this important mission. Cybersecurity and physical security are increasingly interdependent, and the PNNL researchers are developing a first-of-its-kind tool to evaluate how cyber weapons can be used to compromise physical security, like hacking into a system and disabling alarms. And they are looking at designing more resilient systems so that computer networks can almost on their own to detect when some foreign element or attack is underway, and thereby minimizing the damage. This is such important work. These tools are going to be used by utilities and to businesses to monitor threats and to help us modernize the grid of the 21st century. We, in the rest of the state, obviously with the University of Washington and WSU, even the National Guard is playing a very key role in this area. So our state is leading on a national priority, cybersecurity, and that is why I don't want to see the funds cut. I want to see us play a major role. The Quadrennial Review, which was our 4-year annual assessment of our country's energy need, called out cybersecurity as one of the critical areas that needs more attention. It also said we need 1.5 million new workers to help bring about the investment and security for the future. So I know that the STEM focus of TRIDEC will help with this effort. I hope that it will try to focus and attract some of these cybersecurity firms that continue to help us grow in this area. What specifically do we want to do? Well, besides, as I said, doubling the funding for research and development for cybersecurity, we want to establish a program in the Department of Energy to expand the work devoted to cyber R&D. We want PNNL to benefit from this, like providing enhanced forensic intrusion detection, monitoring technology, and sensor viability for the grid network. We also want to make sure that we are identifying for the supply chain all of the utilities that also have to focus on this, the vulnerabilities and the resources they need to secure their areas, and to help us focus on training and skilling this workforce for the future. One more thing I would like the lab and others in the Tri-Cities to help us with. Clearly here in the Tri-Cities, because of our mission in nuclear security, in non-proliferation, in research and detection, the Tri-Cities has already played an incredible role. Why not play that same role on cybersecurity as well? It's so important for us in all of these attacks that we now see happening from state actors to set some international norms and principles for cybersecurity. Why not have a cybersecurity non-proliferation effort that is led by our nation in working with these other countries and set the standards that will help us with international norms in the future? I think this work being done here at the Tri-Cities is so important to our nation. I think it's an opportunity to continue to grow the economy here and make a great contribution and investment towards the future. I'm not saying our future security depends on it, but I guarantee you our future interconnected internet world of networks and devices definitely needs the Tri-Cities to help us secure the future. Thank you all very much for having me today. Okay.
Thank you for your remarks, Senator. We have 3 quick questions for the Senator, and I'm going to shorten them up and present them to you. And if you could just give us some short comments on each of those. The first one is on...
Where does Bob Ferguson live now? No. That's not one of them?
He moved back home here.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so we're happy he's back. Good to see you, Robert. The first question is on the infrastructure challenges in this country. There are so many items that need to be repaired, replaced, improved. There's been talk about a major infrastructure package in Congress, but we haven't seen anything emerge as yet. Do you have any insight on where that bill may be?
Well, we think it's very important that we do everything related to infrastructure, from housing to electricity grid to transportation. And we hope that both sides will come together and talk about that. The last infrastructure bill was a very small package that didn't address, a compilation of issues. And for us as a nation, this infrastructure investment, particularly on the grid side, could stimulate so many jobs and so much growth for the future. So it's needed, it's necessary, and will help grow the economy. So we want the president to engage on this. I think he had it as a priority, and I don't know, some other events, I guess, took over. It is the one thing I think you could get good bipartisan support for. So I hope that I hope people will help us in that effort. It, as I said, could do a lot of things. I don't mind being called Senator Freight, because this was we already did this in our state, and so we suggested it nationally. We said, why not prioritize the movement of goods in infrastructure investment, because it'll grow more jobs. I mean, we were really being challenged with the expansion of ports in other parts of the world where we weren't going to be as competitive if our products took too long to get to market. And So I knew we were on the right track when one of our colleagues who was heading up that infrastructure committee said, yeah, I know. We were in the elevator one day. He said, yeah, I know. Freight can't wait. And I was like, yeah, okay, you got it. Well, I just think that's where we are on a lot of things, so that we just can't wait, and we need the investment.
The second question concerns what's been in the news recently with Alaska Airlines canceling a number of flights because of shortage of pilots. Is there anything that can be done to maybe, without challenging safety concerns, maybe reduce some of the training requirements so we can get more people into the field and working as pilots to get us through this tight time period?
Well, we're definitely working on that, but you said the key word, Fran, and that is safety is such a concern. Sully Sullenberger came and testified before the committee, so people know him as the pilot who landed on the Hudson, and he was very clear. He said, you need a co-pilot. He said, in those seconds, you need someone. You're not even talking to each other. You just are going through your checklist. So you need people qualified on those planes that they are flying. And we think that this increase in demand, so we've been working with every airport in our state on expansion, not just like Pasco, but in Walla Walla, in Spokane, all across the state, because we are seeing increased opportunity. And airports really are an economic development tool. So we've suggested a few things as ways to get more pilots trained and to encourage them, but basically we need more trained pilots. We just have got to get at this process. So we've been saying we're willing to work with smaller communities. Even, the SCASDA grant is this grant that Pasco got that is helping us establish the known demand for Pasco LA traffic. This is what we've done in Spokane, and it worked very well, and this is what we've done in Walla Walla, just between Walla Walla and Seattle. Why not use some of those same tools for pilots, if that's what it takes to get those pilots, trained and skilled? Use the same kind of focus for the rural communities if, in fact, they are having challenges finding those pilots.
Thank you. And the third and final question, it seems like every day we hear more unsettling news coming out about the North Korean situation. Can you share with us some of your thoughts about that situation and how things are playing out?
Well, obviously we're following every single day what's transpiring there, but we're glad to see the UN implementing more sanctions. When you think about North Korea's avenue of resources, whether it's coal or workforce or following their money, these new sanctions the UN just did, I think, will help tighten the focus, tighten the economic opportunities for North Korea. And we certainly need China to step up here and to put the pressure on them in a much more major way, since they are the beneficiary of a lot of that North Korean economic activity. But now that the UN sanctions, which is a week ago, I believe, were put in place, I'm hoping that they will tighten that rein on them and that they will come to a different approach than what they have been doing so far.
Very good. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Fran. Thank you.